Drahll ran fast across the bare rock, thin mountain wind biting into his lungs, snow whipping across the slopes. He was not alone. Draco was ahead of him, huge wing flaps beating against the thin air as he bounded over broken rock, and Linda was right behind Drahll, panting but keeping pace. "Keep moving!" she shouted. Then searchlights suddenly cut through the darkness behind them. A helicopter crested the ridge, then another. Agent gunships. "Down!" Linda yelled. The first burst of gunfire chewed through the rocks around them, sending shards of stone flying. Drahll dove behind a boulder. Draco skidded to a stop beside him. "More coming!" Linda shouted from further down the slope. The sound of rotor blades filled the sky. One of the helicopters swept low over the ridge, its spotlight locking onto them. The gunner leaned out the side. Draco snarled, "Not today!" The dragon hybrid launched himself into the air just as the helicopter swooped lower. Drahll followed. They hit it one after the other, spinning the bird on its axis. Draco grabbed one side of the landing gear while Drahll seized the other. The pilot tried to pull up, but it was too late. Both of them dragged the helicopter down. The gunship slammed into the mountainside in a screaming explosion of spinning blades and torn metal. Flames burst across the ridge. Drahll rolled clear of the wreckage. Linda sprinted toward them as Draco walked out of the flames. Another helicopter was already circling above. They ran, snow and loose rocks sliding beneath their feet as they raced along the mountainside. Gunfire chased them again. Then Linda spotted it. "There!" she called out, pointing. A dark opening in the rock face. A cave. They dove inside just as another burst of gunfire shredded the cliff outside. Rotor blades thundered past the entrance. Inside the cave, the three of them leaned against the stone walls, breathing hard. Draco gave a short laugh. "Well," he said, "that could have gone worse." Linda slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. "I can't keep doing this," she said quietly. Draco glanced over at her. "What?" She shook her head. "This running, fighting, hiding in caves, looking over my shoulder all the time." She gestured toward them both. "I'm not like you two." Drahll stood near the entrance, watching the sky through the narrow gap. She wasn't wrong. All they'd done for the past 2 years since escaping their prison was run and fight off convoys, attack choppers, and mercenaries with more guts than sense. Draco walked over to her. "You've done fine so far." "That's not the point," Linda snapped. "You two were made for this. I wasn't an egg birth." Draco opened his mouth to respond. Then a loud crack of amplified feedback echoed outside. All three of them looked toward the cave entrance. A voice came through a megaphone. Young, calm, and controlled. "Drahll, Draco, Linda. This is Malcolm Laydon." Drahll's eyes narrowed slightly. "Since you have been on the run," Malcolm continued, "my father, Bill Laydon, has passed away." Slowly, a grin spread across Draco's face. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. The megaphone continued. "I believe it would be in all our interests if we resolved this situation peacefully." Linda stepped closer to the cave mouth. "What's he saying?" Malcolm's voice carried across the mountain. "I am requesting you come out so we can negotiate terms." Silence filled the cave. Draco suddenly laughed, a deep, genuine laugh. "Bill's dead?" he said, shaking his head. "Good." Then he called out toward the entrance, "No deal, Laydon." Linda spun toward him. "Draco, wait." "What?" He shrugged. "You really think they're going to negotiate?" Linda stepped forward, frustrated. "We can't keep running forever." Draco crossed his arms. Yes, we can. Besides, you think walking out there is better? At least we'd talk. Talk about what? Which cell block we get? Linda looked at Drahll. Say something. But Drahll stayed silent. Draco sighed and pushed himself away from the wall. All right. Well, I'm not going back, he said. Then he jerked his head toward the cave exit. Follow me if you aren't a Laydon puppet. Linda blinked. Why? What are you? Draco suddenly charged toward the cave entrance. Drahll moved immediately behind him. Linda groaned in frustration but ran after them anyway. The three of them burst out onto the mountainside. The helicopter immediately swung its spotlight toward them. Hold your position, Malcolm's voice shouted. Draco answered first. He inhaled sharply, then unleashed a shard of razor-sharp ice from his mouth straight toward the helicopter. At the same moment, Drahll opened his jaws and spat a glob of burning acid into the air. The chopper veered away as the ice attack skimmed by and the acid splashed across its rotor housing. Alarm sirens blared from the aircraft. Gunfire erupted from the other helicopters circling above, covering the first's retreat. Run! Draco shouted, and the three of them took off down the mountainside again. Ice shards and acid globs launching into the air above. The company's Blackhawks hot on their trail.
25 years later.
Drahll Dragonborn sat on the edge of the narrow dorm bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the blank wall opposite like he expected it to give him answers. Malcolm still hadn't found it. Somewhere out there Sliver was moving, with that in his possession, and all Drahll could do was sit in a reinforced concrete room waiting for someone else to tell him where to go. The comm unit on the wall buzzed. He reached straight over and hit accept. Linda's voice came through instantly. Have they got a location yet?
No.
Figures. He could almost see her pacing on the other end. You good? Drahll didn't answer straight away. His gaze had already drifted.
Yeah, just sick of waiting.
Listen, Benny's been tracking this Drake in the Southern Rockies. Ricky's all fixed up now, so we were wondering.
Go.
Okay, what about you? Are you coming?
No. I'm waiting right here until Malcolm finds me that blue freak.
Okay, I kinda guessed that would be the case. Anyway, you know where we are should you get too bored of waiting.
Yeah,
he muttered eventually, but he wasn't in the dorm anymore. He could hear the echo of laughter bouncing off steel walls that were far too clean to belong anywhere children should have been raised. He was smaller. All of them were. 5 dragon hybrids tearing through an indoor training yard that had been repurposed as a play area, climbing over stacked crates and mock rock formations while human handlers shouted half-hearted warnings they had no intention of enforcing. Draco was already faster than all of them back then, black-scaled even as a hatchling, jagged horn nubs pushing through his skull, membrane wing flaps twitching every time he ran like his body was trying to remember something it hadn't grown into yet. Drogon was behind him, turquoise scales shimmering, laughing heartily, bigger than them all even then, shouldering past Drahll hard enough to knock him into the sanded floor before darting after Draco, the 2 smaller, not egg-hatched hybrids trailing behind. And near the safety railing, Evelyn, 6 years old, watching them with wide, fascinated eyes, her shoes dangling off the rung she'd climbed onto to see better as one of the attendants nervously hovered nearby, while her father, Bill Laydon, checked readouts. "Do it again!" she'd shouted when Drahll had managed a clumsy half-glide from one of the higher platforms. The memory shifted. The walls weren't clean anymore. Now they were burned, scarred, mission rooms instead of playpens, weapons racks where climbing frames used to be. Drahll standing shoulder to shoulder with Draco and Linda, taller now, broader, armored for the first time in gear that actually fit them, teenagers being sent to do things they didn't fully understand yet. And behind the observation glass, Evelyn again. 9 this time, too young to be watching live mission feeds. But Bill had insisted she learn early. Her face lit by the glow of the monitors as they were briefed for deployment. Then, raised voices. A corridor that stank of coolant and scorched metal. Draco pacing like a caged animal, claws scraping the floor with every turn. I'm not doing it again. Linda stood her ground across from him. We don't have a choice. They killed him, Draco snapped, wheeling on her. They took Drogon in knowing he wouldn't make it back, and now you want to just... What? Line up for the next one? And if we run again, she shot back, you think they'll just let us go? They'll have to find us first. His wings flared, black membranes stretching between hooked spines. Horns longer now, face harder. I'm done working for them, Linda. He looked directly at Drahll. Don't be a puppet, brother. They tried to help them, Linda yelled. We don't owe them anything, snapped Draco. They probably did it to them to begin with. Silence hit like a shockwave. Draco turned and started walking. Draco! Linda moved to follow. Drahll's hand caught her arm. He didn't say anything, just shook his head and held her there. They both watched him leave. We can't just let him go, Drahll.
Yes, we can. Besides, he's right.
The comm unit crackled faintly behind him. Drahll blinked. Concrete walls again, dorm room, still waiting. Then, the comms lit up. It was Malcolm. Drahll didn't wait for clearance. He was already out of the dorm before the second alert tone finished sounding. Malcolm was waiting in his office. He didn't sit behind the desk, and he stood beside it, arms folded, like this was a conversation, not an order. I have a retrieval job, Malcolm said. Drahll said nothing, just waited. This one will not be cooperative. That got a slight tilt of the head. He's important, Malcolm continued. And more importantly, he's our ticket to getting back the book.
I'm listening.
There's an individual who works mercenary hunter cases for the company. He tapped a control on the desk and a projection flickered to life between them. Tall, thin, hood pulled down over his face, skin too smooth to be human. Eyes faintly glowing even in the grainy surveillance image. Elven, Malcolm said. Drahll's brow lowered slightly. Elves originate from a parallel plane adjacent to ours. Their physiology allows them to phase between realms at will. The projection shifted, showing blurred frames of the same figure vanishing mid-stride. This one, Malcolm went on, has been banished from his own plane. He cannot remain there permanently, only phase back temporarily before being forced into this reality again.
So trap him here.
Drahll growled. We've tried. Another image, a shattered breach door, collapsed containment rigging, a squad of agents laid out across a concrete floor. He uses harmonic vibration as a weapon, Malcolm said, focuses it through an elven crystal mace. It allows him to destabilize matter at a molecular level. Armor, restraints, structural supports. He didn't need to finish. Drahll could see the results.
And you want me to, what? Knock him out and drag him back here?
Yes. Malcolm met his gaze. You're the only asset we have capable of closing distance fast enough to overwhelm him before he can phase. Drahll's jaw flexed. He knows where Sliver has taken the book, Malcolm added. That did it. A low growl rumbled in Drahll's chest.
When do we leave?
Malcolm allowed himself the faintest smile. As soon as you're ready.
I've been ready all week.
Drahll turned and headed for the door. "See you when you get back," called Malcolm as he left. The drop hatch opened into nothing but night air and frozen wind. Drahll stepped out without hesitation. For a moment, there was only the roar of the storm tearing across the mountainside. Then the membrane flaps beneath his arms snapped open with a leathery crack as he caught the air and banked hard toward the ridge below. He landed in a crouch that split stone. Drahll straightened slowly, golden bronze scales catching what little moonlight bled through the storm, and turned toward the cave mouth carved into the slope ahead. No guards, no wards visible. It was too easy. This Margus was either brave or stupid. He ducked inside anyway. The cavern twisted inward through smooth, natural stone, widening into a hollow chamber lit by a faint violet glow deeper within. The air hummed, not sound, pressure, like standing beside a turbine that wasn't there. Then,
Dragonkin.
the voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, calm, almost amused.
I wondered how long it would take Malcolm to send someone.
Drahll's eyes narrowed. A figure stepped partially into the dim light across the chamber. Tall for a man, narrow-shouldered, leaning casually against a pillar of rock, hooded and cloaked, crystal mace resting against one shoulder.
You're looking for something, and I imagine I know exactly what.
Drahll didn't respond, didn't move.
I could help you find it.
That made him pause, only for a second. Then, something shifted. Movement. Behind the pillar to Margus's left, a shadow that didn't quite match the light. Drahll moved, fast enough to crack the air. His claws closed on nothing as Margus vanished in a shimmer of distortion. A deep tone rang out, and the world punched him. A violent harmonic blast slammed into his chest mid-lunge and launched him sideways into the cavern wall hard enough to spiderweb the rock on impact. Stone collapsed around him in a grinding roar. By the time he tore himself free, Margus was already running deeper into the mountain. Drahll pushed himself out of the crater in the wall and ran. No hesitation, no warning, just a full charge straight down the narrowing cavern as Margus's footsteps echoed ahead of him. He could see him now, only 20 meters. 15. The elf glanced back once, eyes glowing faintly violet in the dark, and Drahll lunged. His claws were inches from the back of Margus's neck, and the air warped. Margus flickered out of existence like a blown candle. Drahll's momentum carried him straight through empty space. He skidded to a stop, claws carving twin trenches through the stone. He looked back down the tunnel. Light bent near the cave mouth. Margus reappeared 30 meters ahead, already sprinting for the exit. Drahll roared and launched after him again. 10 meters. 5. He leapt, and Margus vanished again. Drahll hit the ground chest first and rolled hard across the stone before forcing himself back up with a snarl. He spun. Margus was there at the cave mouth, running out of view. Drahll charged after him, boots smashing through loose rock as the cave opened out onto the mountainside. Drahll gained on him, almost close enough to grab. Flicker. Gone again. Drahll didn't have time to stop. His foot hit open air. The ridge dropped away beneath him in a sheer cliff face, vanishing into darkness. He caught himself at the last possible second, claws slamming into the rock edge and biting deep as half his body tipped out into the void below. For a moment there was nothing but wind. Then, a shimmer beside him, and something unseen pushed him onto the ledge. Margus stood calmly a few paces back from the edge, watching.
Why do you chase me? I said I would help you find what you seek.
Drahll advanced again, slow this time. Measured. Margus gave a small sigh.
You're very persistent. If it truly is so important to Malcolm, I suppose I shall go and see him myself.
He tapped the crystal mace lightly against the stone. The air bent around him, and he was gone. Drahll stood looking at the space he'd occupied just a moment ago and snorted with frustration. Then he keyed his comm.
Malcolm, I couldn't capture this Margus. I've lost him, but he said he was.
It's fine, he's here.
What do you mean he's there? He was just here a minute ago.
Well, now he's here. It doesn't matter. This is exactly what I wanted. Good job. I'm going to work something out with him now, so just come on back. Drahll shook his head as the call ended. That was the dumbest mission ever. He could feel it before the doors to Malcolm's office even opened. That same low, humming pressure in the air, like the stone itself was vibrating just beneath hearing. When he entered Malcolm's office, the elf was standing off to one side of the room as though he'd always belonged there. Calm, composed, crystal mace resting upright in both hands. Drahll's lip curled slightly. Malcolm noticed, but ignored it. "We've come to an arrangement," he said simply. Drahll didn't ask what it had cost. Sliver no longer has the book. That stopped him. Margus spoke this time.
You two have a lot to discuss, so I'll take my leave.
The air distorted, and he was gone. Malcolm turned to Drahll, like that happened every other weekday. It was taken from him by the red-haired necromancer we've been tracking. Drahll's eyes narrowed. Malcolm nodded once. Yes, the same one Marta warned us about. We now know where the artifact is being held. And? Malcolm hesitated, which told Drahll everything. The location is fortified, he admitted. Warded, shielded both physically and metaphysically. We won't be getting in without preparation. The book is being kept in a place where the veil between realms is thin. She's using it to strengthen her control over the dead already. Drahll's claws flexed.
So make the plan.
We are, Malcolm replied, but assembling the necessary assets will take time. Silence hung in the room for a moment. Then, in the meantime, Malcolm said carefully, I have one last favor to ask. Drahll stared at him. There's a beastman stronghold in the mountains above the academy. Some of the escapees that didn't make it off-site have taken refuge in a cave system up there. A projection flickered to life, showing jagged peaks overlooking the academy complex far below. We've attempted entry twice. Both teams were forced back. They've collapsed the primary access points from the inside. Malcolm looked back at him. We need them flushed out before they regroup, with any external support. Drahll's expression darkened slightly. A low growl rolled through his chest.
Fine. Bit of beastman bashing should keep me busy while you figure out how to get that book back.
Fantastic. If you can sort that problem out for me, that's one less thing to worry about. Drahll gave no response. He just turned and headed for the door. The transport touched down just outside the outer gate of the Beast Agents Academy. The place hadn't changed. From the outside, it still looked like a mountain prison. Concrete walls cut directly into the rock face, watchtowers bristling with turrets, floodlights sweeping the slopes above the facility. There was armed personnel patrolling the outer fence. The place was still in lockdown. Drahll stepped down from the transport ramp and rolled his shoulders. Waiting for him at the gate were Commander Morton and Captain Abbott. Morton gave a short nod in greeting. Abbott just scowled. Didn't think we'd be seeing you again so soon, Morton said. Drahll grunted. Abbott folded her arms inside the frame of her cyber power suit. We've got a situation.
I've heard.
Morton gestured toward the mountains above the academy. High above the facility, jagged cliffs clawed into the clouds. They're up there on the highest ridge. A projection flickered from Abbott's wrist device, showing a rough map of the mountainside. About 20 beast folk who escaped the facility have took refuge in a cave system along this ridge. They've collapsed most of the entry tunnels. 3 teams tried going in, Abbott added, all forced back with several injuries. Drahll looked at her.
They have weapons?
Barely, Morton said. A couple of pistols between them. Abbott gave a humorless smile. But they're doing disturbingly well with blades and clubs, improvised stuff. Morton continued. Every team we've sent in has been pushed back by close combat. They know the cave layout now. They're using choke points and setting traps. Drahll glanced up the mountainside again. The cave entrance was barely visible from here. High, cold, difficult terrain. Morton stepped aside. We've got an elite squad ready to escort you up and assist with the clearing operation. Drahll started walking toward the mountain path.
No thanks.
Morton blinked. They're trained for...
I said no.
Drahll didn't even look back. The heavy gate behind him slid open as he approached, and he stepped through it, heading straight for the steep trail that climbed toward the ridge. Abbott watched him go. You really think he can handle 20 of them alone? Morton shrugged. If they're smart. He looked up at the towering dragon hybrid already halfway up the slope. They'll run. The climb took nearly an hour. Loose shale slid under Drahll's boots as he trudged up the steep mountain path, the cold wind tearing across the ridge and rattling the sparse scrub growing out of the rock. The Beast Agents Academy looked small from up here, just a gray scar carved into the mountainside far below. Drahll didn't look at it for long. He was watching the ridge above. There was movement, just a flicker, but someone was up there, watching. They knew he was coming then. He kept climbing, no rush. When he reached the final rise before the cave, the entrance finally came into view. A dark slit cut into the rock wall, and around it, a barricade, loose boulders and shattered rock piled shoulder high across the entrance like a crude fortress wall. Drahll stopped 10 meters away. The wind whistled through the gaps in the stones. Then, crack. A pistol round struck the rock beside his foot and ricocheted off into the valley. Drahll didn't even flinch. 2 figures shifted in the shadow of the cave behind the barricade. One was a foxman, orange fur, narrow muzzle, pistol in hand. Beside him crouched a tall, lean woman with the long legs and curved horns of a springbok. She had a second pistol braced across the top of the stone barrier. "Stop right there!" the foxman shouted. Drahll slowly lifted his head. "You're in the wrong place," the foxman continued. "Turn around and go back to the academy," the springbok woman added quietly. "We don't want to fight anymore." Drahll's voice came out low and flat.
Come back quietly and you won't have to.
The foxman laughed. "Not happening, pal."
Last chance. This doesn't have to be painful.
The springbok woman shook her head. "No. Tell Abbott to come if you want to negotiate."
Why, Abbott?
"Just because. We'll only deal with Captain Abbott."
No chance. You're dealing with me now.
The foxman laughed again and squeezed the trigger. The cave entrance erupted in gunfire. Drahll moved. He surged forward like a charging bull, smashing straight into the rock barricade. Stones exploded outward as his shoulder plowed through the pile, scattering half the barrier down the slope. Another shot cracked past his head. The springbok woman bolted instantly, vaulting deeper into the cave the moment the barricade broke. The foxman tried to follow, but he was way too slow. Drahll's hand snapped out and caught the foxman by the tail mid-sprint. He yelped as he was yanked backwards off his feet, then slammed into the ground hard enough to knock the pistol from his hand. Drahll planted one massive foot on his chest. The foxman froze with terror.
Why, Abbott?
I don't know, it squealed. Drahll pressed down slightly with his foot, making Fox's face turn red for a moment, then released it again.
Don't make me repeat myself.
All right, all right. All I know is she's been helping the guys who planned the breakout.
Sliver?
I don't know, man. Look, I just ran when everyone else did.
What guys?
The White Tiger and Hyena Bill are the ones who arranged it.
They both in the cave?
Only the White Tiger. Hyena Bill was defeated in the escape by you, I believe. He attacked you on the ridge with some others.
Okay, so just Tiger. How many others?
There's Greg the Squirrel, Tony the Tiger Woman, Jack the...
I don't need their names.
The fox seemed to shrink in size as Drahll eyeballed him. 17, including me.
Listen carefully,
Drahll said quietly. The foxman swallowed.
You run back to the academy. Tell them you're done and say nothing to Abbott. Understand?
His claws tightened slightly on the foxman's tail as he leaned closer.
Because if I have to come looking for you again, I won't be this polite.
His eyes narrowed. The foxman nodded his head frantically, agreeing to anything just to get out from under Drahll's massive foot. Then he released him. The foxman scrambled upright instantly, limping off down the mountain without looking back. Drahll watched until he disappeared over the ridge. Then he turned and stepped into the cave. He knew there was something dodgy about Abbott from the get-go, but he hadn't expected that. The cave swallowed the daylight almost immediately. Drahll stepped deeper into the darkness, the sound of wind fading behind him as the tunnel twisted into the mountain. It wasn't a single cave. It was a network. Old. Natural. 4 larger caverns connected by narrow tunnels that branched like veins through the rock. He could smell them. Beast folk. Sweat. Fear. And the faint metallic scent of blood from earlier fights with Academy teams. Every other entrance tunnel had been completely collapsed, stone packed tight from the inside. Whoever organized this knew exactly how to turn the cave into a choke point. Only the tunnel Drahll had entered was still open, which meant everyone inside knew exactly where he was coming from. Heavy footsteps echoed ahead. Something big was coming. A figure appeared around the bend, a towering grizzlyman, fur dark and matted, shoulders nearly filling the tunnel. The two of them stopped at the same time. The bear's eyes widened as he saw Drahll's size. Then he backed away slowly, not running, retreating. Drahll followed. The tunnel opened suddenly into the first cavern. It was smaller than he expected. A shallow pool of cold water sat in the center of the chamber, reflecting faint light from cracks high above. The stone floor was uneven, slick with moisture. 3 beast folk stood inside. The grizzly man, a deerman, tall and nervous, antlers brushing the low ceiling, and the springbok woman who had escaped at the entrance. The moment Drahll stepped into the chamber, the deer panicked. He bolted straight into one of the side tunnels without a word. The springbok raised her pistol but didn't fire. "We don't want any trouble," she stammered quickly. Drahll kept walking toward them.
It's too late for that.
The grizzlyman roared and charged. The ground shook under the bear's weight as he swung a massive claw toward Drahll's head. Drahll stepped into the attack. His shoulder smashed into the grizzlyman's chest like a battering ram and lifted the beast completely off his feet. The bear crashed into the cavern wall hard enough to knock loose chunks of stone. Before he could recover, Drahll grabbed him by the fur and hauled him upright. 2 brutal punches slammed into the bear's ribs. Then Drahll lifted him again and hurled him headfirst across the cavern. The grizzly man hit the far wall with a sickening crack and slumped to the ground, groaning and dazed. Behind him, the springbok fired in panic. The pistol rounds struck Drahll's chest and shoulder. They didn't penetrate far, just shallow stings against the bronze scales, enough to irritate him. Drahll turned slowly. Her hands were shaking now. "Stop!" she cried. Drahll's roar filled the cavern. She flinched back, tears already running down her face. He stepped closer. She dropped the pistol immediately, squeezing her eyes shut tight.
Go.
He growled. She opened one eye slowly.
Go back to the academy.
She hesitated. His eyes narrowed.
Now.
She didn't argue again. The springbok jumped at his order and ran for the cave entrance the same way the foxman had. Drahll watched her disappear into the tunnel. Then he turned back toward the deeper passages of the cave. 14 more were still in there. Drahll followed the tunnel the deer had taken. The passage twisted downward, the rock walls narrowing in places so tightly his shoulders brushed both sides as he moved through. Footsteps echoed ahead, running, then stopping. He kept going. The tunnel opened into another cavern not far ahead, smaller than the first. No water this time, just a flat, dusty stone floor and jagged walls where the mountain had cracked open long ago. 3 figures stood waiting just inside the entrance. A zebra man, lean, twitchy, striped hide slick with sweat, a curved dagger gripped tightly in one hand, and beside him stood 2 enormous buffalo men, their thick horns curving outward like battering rams. The zebra man grinned nervously when he saw Drahll. You should have turned around," the zebra stuttered. Drahll didn't answer. The buffalo men charged. Both of them. Their hooves thundered across the cavern floor as they slammed into him together like a pair of runaway trucks. The impact drove Drahll backward hard enough to smash him into the cavern wall with a cracking boom that shook loose dust from the ceiling. One of the buffalo men tried to pin him there. Drahll swung. His arm came down in a brutal hammer blow that caught the first buffalo square across the back of the skull. The blow dropped the huge beastman crashing to the ground. Then a kick to the gut sent him rolling across the cavern floor. The second one lunged back, allowing the zebra to strike. It lashed its blade across Drahll's shoulder, leaving nothing but a paper cut, then ducked back again as the buffalo lunged back in. Drahll grabbed him by the shoulders mid-charge, twisted his massive body sideways, and hurled him across the chamber. The buffalo man slammed directly into the zebra man. The striped fighter barely had time to shriek before both of them hit the ground in a tangled heap. The zebraman scrambled straight back up, dagger slashing wildly through the air like a madman. "Come on then, come on," he screamed. The blade flashed toward Drahll's face. Drahll stepped straight through it. His hand caught the zebraman by the throat. The charge carried both of them forward, and the zebraman's back smashed into the cavern wall with bone-jarring force. The dagger clattered away across the floor. Drahll drove one crushing punch into the zebraman's ribs and another into his jaw. The striped beastman went limp instantly. Behind him, the second buffalo man staggered upright again. Drahll turned. The buffalo barely raised his arms before a heavy punch slammed into the side of his head. The giant beastman dropped to the floor like a felled tree. Silence returned to the cavern. 3 bodies sprawled across the stone floor, unconscious. Drahll rolled his shoulders. Then he turned toward the tunnel that wasn't caved in and started walking. Drahll moved down the next tunnel at a steady pace. The air inside the mountain had grown warmer, thick with the scent of sweat and damp stone. His footsteps echoed ahead of him, rolling down the passage like distant thunder. Then he heard them. Voices. Low, nervous chattering echoing through the rock somewhere ahead. Beast folk. More than a few by the sound of it. Then one voice cut through the others, deep, rough, and furious. "Run then, you cowards!" the voice snarled. "See how far you get." The chatter stopped instantly. Silence swallowed the tunnels again. Drahll kept walking. The passage widened ahead and spilled out into the third cavern. This one was enormous compared to the others. The ceiling arched high overhead, lost in darkness, and the ground in the center of the chamber had collapsed inward long ago. A massive crater dominated the middle of the cavern, like a bowl carved into the stone. Movement below caught his eye immediately. Inside the crater stood 4 beast agents. A lizard man, tall and sinewy, a orange crest atop his head, a squat, wide-mouthed frogman shifting nervously from foot to foot, and 2 enormous hippomorphs, thick arms hanging like tree trunks at their sides, heads almost as big as their upper bodies. All 4 of them looked up as Drahll stepped into the cavern, but they weren't the ones who had shouted. Drahll's eyes lifted to the far side of the chamber. Across the crater, standing on a rocky ledge beside the entrance to the final tunnel, were 2 more figures. One was a towering Siberian white tigerman, his striped fur bright even in the dim cavern light. He stood with his arms folded, long tail flicking slowly behind him. Beside him stood something even larger, a massive Sasquatch, broad-shouldered and covered in thick, dark fur. The creature was almost the same height as Drahll himself, its long arms hanging low and powerful. The tigerman smiled faintly. "Well," he called across the cavern, "you certainly made a mess getting this far." The frogman shifted uneasily in the crater below. The hippos cracked their knuckles. The tigerman tilted his head slightly. "You really should have turned back." His eyes narrowed. "There are too many of us for you to handle." He gestured casually toward the tunnel behind Drahll. "You still have a choice. Go back while you can." For a moment, the cavern was completely still. Then Drahll snorted loudly. A puff of steam rolled from his nostrils in the cold cave air. Then he stepped forward. The tigerman sighed. Pity. "Oh well. Playtime, boys." The hippomorphs roared and started climbing out of the crater. The lizard man darted for the edge like a striking snake. The frogman bounded forward with a guttural croak. Across the cavern, the Sasquatch leaned forward, massive fists clenching as the tigerman's grin slowly faded, and the fight began. The lizardman was the first out of the crater. Fast on its feet, it scrambled up the broken rock and lunged straight for Drahll with a baton raised. Drahll swung. The punch would have crushed its skull, but the reptile darted backward just in time. The frogman came next. It bounded toward him with a croaking roar, long legs launching it into the air. Drahll didn't even look. His leg snapped out in a brutal sidekick, straight into its gut. The impact sent the frogman flying clear across the cavern like a rag doll, where the white tigerman casually caught it by the shoulder to stop the body from rolling past him. The frogman hung limp in his grip, out cold. The hippomorphs hauled themselves up the ledge now. Drahll stepped forward and drove his foot down hard onto one skull. The enormous beastman bellowed as the stomp forced its head straight back down into the crater again. Then, from behind him, the lizard man struck. A blur of claws and elbows hammered toward Drahll's back and ribs in a rapid flurry. Most of the strikes bounced harmlessly off his scales, barely leaving a mark. Drahll turned, swinging his arm out wide. His backhand caught the lizard man across the jaw like a wrecking ball. The reptile smashed into the cavern wall with a loud crack and slid down the stone unconscious. Then, pain flared. The second hippomorph had reached him. Its massive jaws clamped down around Drahll's forearm. Huge tusk-like teeth punched through scale and into muscle. Drahll roared. The sound shook dust loose from the ceiling. He grabbed the hippo by the shoulders and slammed it into the cavern wall, over and over. Each impact rattled the stone. At the same time, his other fist hammered down again and again into the hippo's skull. The beast's eyes flickered and its grip finally loosened. Its body slid to the floor completely unconscious, just as something heavy slammed into his back. It was the first hippo, the one he'd stomped earlier. It had climbed back out of the crater and charged him from behind. Drahll spun, catching its chin with a hook that turned Hippo's head. Then Drahll's fist drove upward in a savage uppercut. The punch lifted the giant beastman clear off its feet. Its head smashed into the cavern roof with a dull boom before the body collapsed back to the ground in a heap. Four beast folk lay scattered across the cavern floor, unmoving. Drahll stepped over the hippos and looked across the crater. The white tigerman had dropped the frogman's limp body beside him. The huge Sasquatch hung over the crater's edge slightly, massive hands curling into fists. The tigerman's mocking smile had vanished now. He looked at the unconscious fighters below, then back at Drahll. Suddenly, pistol fire rained down from above. Drahll looked up. A bat morph hung from the ceiling, almost invisible in the shadow. Drahll grabbed the unconscious lizardman's tail with one hand and hurled it upward straight towards the bat. Lizard's face met Bat's head, and both bounced off the ceiling, coming crashing down together into the crater and bringing part of the cavern's interior with them. Drahll stepped to the crater's edge, rolling his neck.
How many more of you wimps are down here? I haven't got all day.
The tigerman gave a mocking laugh while tapping the Sasquatch on the back. You ain't seen nothing yet. Then he bowed and stepped back. The Sasquatch steps forward onto the ledge, beating its chest with both fists. Then it throws its head back and roars. The sound rolled through the cavern like thunder. Drahll answered with a low snort and a rumbling growl from deep in his chest. For a moment, they stared at each other across the crater. Then both of them moved at the same time. They launched forward simultaneously, colliding in midair. Two massive bodies slammed together and crashed to the ground in a violent tangle of claws, fur, and scales. Stone cracked beneath them as they grappled across the cavern floor. The Sasquatch was incredibly strong, its arms locked around Drahll's shoulders, trying to crush him down. Drahll shoved back and forced them apart. They scrambled up at the same moment and separated, panting. They charged again. This time their shoulders collided like two charging bulls. The impact echoed through the cavern. Drahll dug his feet into the rock and drove the Sasquatch backward, pushing it step by step until its back slammed into the steep side of the crater. The Sasquatch snarled and swung. Its fists hammered into Drahll's ribs and jaw, then suddenly it kicked off the ground and drop-kicked him square in the face. The blow snapped Drahll's head back and sent him staggering. A thin line of blood ran from his nose. He snarled, then charged again. The two giants crashed together once more. Blows traded back and forth, heavy punches shaking the cavern walls. The Sasquatch suddenly leapt onto Drahll's back, arms locking around his throat. Drahll pulled at its arms, but its grip was solid. He grabbed one of the creature's hands and bit down hard. The Sasquatch howled and released its grip. Drahll twisted, throwing his weight backward and slamming the creature beneath him. He landed on top of it. A back elbow to the ribs loosened its grip. He rolled over and headbutted the Squatch right on the nose. Then fists began crashing down. 3 brutal hammer blows to the Sasquatch's face as it tried to crawl away beneath him. Drahll grabbed the creature by the shoulders and hurled it into the sloping wall of the crater. He charged straight up behind it, smashing his full weight into the beast. The Sasquatch crashed against the rock but somehow managed to claw its way back up the incline. It climbed out. Drahll jumped up behind it. He caught the creature around the waist, lifted, then twisted backward. The suplex drove the Sasquatch headfirst down into the crater floor with a bone-shaking impact that echoed through the cavern. Dust rose slowly into the air. The Sasquatch lay still, face down, finished. Drahll stood at the crater's edge, breathing heavily. Then something registered. He looked up toward the far ledge. Empty. The white tigerman was gone. The tunnel behind where he had stood yawned open into darkness. Drahll rubbed his arm where the hippo bit him, then launched up to the ledge and entered the tunnel to the last chamber. The passage was short, barely 20 meters before it opened into the final chamber. This cavern was much smaller than the others and shaped oddly, an L-shaped pocket of stone carved into the mountain. Pale daylight leaked in from a narrow crack in the rock ceiling, and there were still people here. 4 beast folk stood near the bend, a squirrel-morph couple, both small and shaking, a rabbit woman, long ears drooping nervously, and the deer man who had fled the first cavern. The moment Drahll stepped in, they all froze, hands raised, not attacking. He approached them quickly and stopped. The rabbit woman spoke first. "Please, don't hurt us." The squirrel male nodded quickly. "We don't want to fight anymore." The deerman swallowed hard, but stepped forward anyway. "Show mercy," he said quietly. Drahll stared down at them. None of them were holding weapons. He exhaled through his nose and sighed.
Go. Return to the academy.
Relief washed across their faces almost instantly. But before they moved, Drahll asked one more question.
Where is the tigerman?
The deerman glanced nervously toward the tunnel behind Drahll. "He left."
Where?
"The entrance. That way," he said, pointing round the bend. Drahll took off immediately, round the bend, and down another short tunnel to Chamber 1. By the time he reached the first cavern again, his pace had turned into a full run. He tore through the tunnels, past the bodies of the unconscious fighters, through the smashed barricade, and out into the cold mountain air. The wind whipped across the ridge. The path down toward the academy stretched empty across the rock. No white fur, no striped tail. He turned to look up the mountain. Nothing but bare rock. No sign of the tigerman anywhere. He was gone. Drahll stood on the ridge for another moment, scanning the mountainside. The tigerman had just completely vanished. With an annoyed snort, Drahll turned and went back into the cave. The tunnels were quiet now. The fighters he'd dropped were still scattered through the chambers exactly where they had fallen. He reached the first cavern with the small pool and grabbed the grizzly man under one arm and the zebra man by the back of the neck. Neither stirred. Dragging them was easier than it should have been. Half an hour later, he stomped down the last stretch of the mountain path toward the gates of the Beast Agents Academy. The guards on the wall spotted him first. By the time he reached the gate, Morton was already stepping outside. Drahll didn't slow. He dumped the 2 unconscious beast folk on the ground in front of the gate with a heavy thud. Morton looked down at them. "I take it things went well." Drahll ignored that.
Where's Abbott?
Morton straightened slightly. She had to leave. Drahll's eyes narrowed. "Family emergency," Morton continued. "Got a call not long ago." Drahll glanced toward the academy entrance.
The fox and the springbok?
Morton nodded. They came down the mountain about 20 minutes ago. Abbott escorted them inside. He shrugged slightly. That's when she got the call and had to go. Drahll's jaw tightened.
I heard something up there.
Morton frowned. What? Drahll looked back up toward the mountain.
One of them mentioned they had help escaping.
Morton waited. Drahll turned back to him.
From her?
Morton's expression changed slightly.
You need to stop her.
Stop who? Drahll didn't answer directly, he said instead.
There are more of them in the cave as well. 8 more.
He jerked a thumb toward the mountain.
Send teams to collect them before they wake up.
Morton was still processing. Drahll stepped closer.
I need transport back.
Back where?
Malcolm's biofacility. Oh, and their leader, the tiger. He escaped.
Morton looked at the bodies on the ground again, then at the mountain, then back at Drahll. "I'll get a vehicle ready," he said. Then he marched off back inside. Drahll headed for the helipads, still wondering where that tiger went. The transport roared through the night sky, banking away from the mountains and heading toward Malcolm's facility. Inside the troop bay, Drahll sat alone. The vibration of the engines hummed through the metal floor beneath his boots. Below them, the mountains rolled past in dark, jagged shapes. He stared out the open side hatch, and for a moment, the present slipped. The mission had gone perfectly, too perfectly. The facility they had been sent to destroy still burned behind them, thick black smoke rising into the night sky. The target had been eliminated, the objective completed. Just another job, just another place wiped off the map. They stood on a ridge overlooking the burning compound while the extraction transport was still minutes away. Draco sat on a rock, watching the flames. Linda paced back and forth, rubbing the back of her neck. Drahll stood at the edge of the ridge, silent as usual. Finally, Linda stopped pacing. "You ever notice something?" she said. Draco glanced at her. "What?" She gestured toward the fire below. "We never see the whole picture." Draco snorted. "That's because we're not supposed to." Linda frowned. "That doesn't bother you?" Draco leaned back slightly. "Of course it does." "Then why?" "Because that's the job. That's why they made us." Linda shook her head. "That's not a job." She pointed down toward the burning buildings. "That's people." Draco's expression darkened slightly. "Bill Laydon gives us targets," he said. "We eliminate them. That's how this works." Linda folded her arms. "So we're just tools." Draco gave a humorless smile. "Yeah." She looked at Drahll. "And you're okay with that?" Drahll didn't answer right away. The wind pushed smoke across the ridge below them. Finally he spoke.
We were made for it.
Linda looked frustrated. "That doesn't mean we have to keep doing it." Draco stood up slowly. "What are you suggesting?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Draco looked back toward the burning facility, then back toward the sky where their transport would soon appear. Then he said something that changed everything. "We could leave." Linda blinked. "Leave?" "Yeah," Draco shrugged. "Just not get on the transport." "That's insane." Draco pointed down the mountain. "Is it?" Linda shook her head. "They'd hunt us." "Probably," he agreed. "They'd never stop chasing us." "Definitely not." She stared at him. "So why would we do that?" Draco shrugged again. "Because I'm getting tired of being Bill Laydon's attack dog, too." Linda looked at Drahll again, waiting. For once, he didn't stay silent.
I agree.
Draco smirked. Linda stared at them both. "You're serious?" Drahll turned away from the burning facility and started walking down the mountain. Draco followed him without hesitation. Linda stood there for a few seconds longer. Then she sighed. "Damn it," and ran after them. The memory shifted. Now there was snow, wind screaming across the mountains. 2 years had passed since they ran. 2 years of hiding, fighting, and barely staying ahead of the helicopters that never stopped searching. And now they were cornered. The cave was small, its entrance half buried in snow. Outside, the thunder of rotor blades shook the stone walls as several helicopters hovered just beyond the cliff. Searchlights cut through the falling snow. Inside the cave, the three of them stood facing each other. Linda looked exhausted. Her clothes were worn, her hair tangled from weeks of travel through the mountains. She leaned against the rock wall like her legs might give out. Draco paced near the entrance, glancing outside at the hovering aircraft. Drahll stood between them. "I think we should take Hank's offer," Linda announced. Draco shook his head slowly. "No." Linda turned toward him. "You didn't even think about it." "I don't need to. They said we can run our own team. They said, they're lying." Linda's voice rose. "You don't know that. They hunted us for 2 years, Linda. Because we ran. Because we were property," Draco snapped. Linda's shoulders sagged. "I'm tired, Draco." Her voice was quiet now. "Tired of running." Draco looked at her for a long moment. "You believe them?" She nodded slowly. "They're offering us freedom." Draco gave a hollow laugh. "No, they're just offering a better cage." Linda turned toward Drahll. "Please." Her voice cracked slightly. "I can't keep doing this, Drahll." Drahll looked between them. Draco shook his head. "Brother, don't." But Linda stepped closer to Drahll. "Please, I'm worn out," she whispered. After a long moment, Drahll finally spoke.
We take the deal.
Draco stared at him. "You're not serious." Drahll didn't answer. Linda looked relieved immediately. "Thank you." Draco let out a slow breath. "All right, do what you want." He walked toward the cave entrance. Linda stood up straight again. "Draco?" He stopped at the mouth of the cave. "I'm not going back. If you two want to go back to being puppets, that's up to you." "They'll break their word," he said quietly. "They always do." Linda stepped forward. "Draco, wait. We're family." But he shook his head. Then he looked back at Drahll. "Family? If you go back now, you're no family of mine?" Drahll scowled at him. Linda looked shocked. "Don't try coming after me either." And with that, he stepped out into the storm and disappeared down the mountainside. The helicopters shifted their searchlights to track him. Linda watched until he vanished in the snow. Then she turned back toward Drahll. "Do something," she pleaded.
What? You heard him. He's not going back. And we're not family.
Then he walked out into the night to make the deal. Linda followed close behind, tears in her eyes. And just like that, their futures had been chosen. Drahll dropped back into the present, just as the chopper landed at Malcolm's biofacility. Many times he'd wondered what became of Draco, but now wasn't the time. He had business to attend to. When he reached Malcolm's office, the door was already open. Malcolm stood behind his desk, one hand resting on the surface while a series of holographic screens hovered in the air around him. Several agents moved across the displays, reports flashing past faster than most people could read. Malcolm looked up when Drahll entered. "You're back." Drahll didn't bother sitting.
You lost someone.
Malcolm's jaw tightened slightly. "Yes." He shut down one of the displays with a gesture. "We've lost contact with Captain Abbott." Drahll waited. Malcolm continued. "She's now officially classified as a fugitive." Drahll wasn't surprised.
One escaped.
Malcolm raised an eyebrow.
The White Tigerman. He ran during the last fight.
"That's unfortunate," Malcolm replied as he made a quick note on one of the floating screens. Then he changed the display. A massive canyon appeared in the projection. The Grand Canyon. But the view zoomed in on a particular section of cliffside. An unnatural structure was carved into a huge rock outcrop that jutted from the canyon wall like a stone platform. That, Malcolm said, is where the book is. Drahll studied the image. The facility was heavily fortified. High electric fencing surrounded the yard. Sentry turrets dotted the perimeter walls. Several armed patrols walked the grounds. And beyond the fences, movement. Dozens of figures wandering aimlessly through the yard. Zombies. The red-haired woman is using the canyon walls as natural defense, Malcolm continued. The facility is built directly into that rock outcrop. The only access point is a single reinforced gate. He zoomed the image closer. The entire outer yard is filled with undead. Drahll snorted. Malcolm continued calmly. Turrets cover every approach. Guards rotate in 12-hour shifts. He folded his hands behind his back. This will require planning. Drahll didn't disagree. I'm assembling a team capable of infiltrating the structure. Malcolm dismissed the projection. I'll contact you when the details are ready. Drahll nodded once. Malcolm tapped a control on his desk. I've arranged transport back to your team. Drahll turned to leave, but Malcolm spoke one more time before he reached the door. Drahll. He stopped. Malcolm leaned back slightly. Don't take any jobs you aren't willing to walk away from. I'm going to need you on this. Drahll said nothing. He just left the office, leaving Malcolm to his planning.
Thank you all for watching my second installment in the Laydons Asset series. Smash that like button if you know what's good for you. And you better come back for my next episode. Until then, peace.